Hey everyone, it's Laura. Welcome back to my channel. If you guys are new here, you guys might not know that I do a lot of cooking videos. So I just kind of take the camera around and show you the different things that I am making for the week. I give different breakfast ideas. I do a lot of lunches and dinners and just a lot of large family cook with me. I have 6 kids, and so I get lots of questions about how I have time or how I go about cooking meals from scratch and getting healthy meals on the table. So I thought I would just do a complete video kind of sitting down and telling you guys the different tips that I have on meal planning and prepping food and just how easy it really can be to get healthy meals on the table. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna say is that I don't actually full-blown meal plan. So when I think about meal planning, I picture someone sitting down with a calendar or a planner and writing out breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, and writing each one exactly what you're gonna be making with recipes printed out. I do not do that. I'm sure there are some people that are very organized that do that, and I am more of a list, organized type A person, but that still is just not my personality. I think mainly because in the past when I have tried to do meal plans, I noticed that they never stuck. And so I might have something written down for a certain day, and then we end up getting invited over to my parents' house and we eat dinner there, or my mom sends home leftovers after a meal, or I have leftovers after a meal. It just seems like it never fully worked out, and so things got moved around. So I don't really like to do a full-blown meal plan, but I still do find a way to get meals on the table every single meal. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I have something on the table. It might not always be the most elaborate best meal, but it is something that I can quickly whip up and get on the table. So my biggest tip that I have is making sure that you have meat defrosted in the refrigerator. That is the basis for pretty much every meal for us. I know most people, like picking out a protein or having your meat, is the biggest thing that you need to make a meal. And if you don't have something defrosted, it'll make it a lot longer or harder or even impossible to make the meal. And so what I do is at the beginning of the week, well, ideally this would be at the beginning of the week. I don't always do it at the beginning of the week. Sometimes it just happens throughout the week, but I try to find a time to go down to my deep freezer with a big bowl. I have this big mixing bowl that just stays in my refrigerator. I take it down to the freezer and I load it up with some chicken and some roast and some maybe ground beef, steaks, whatever I want. I kind of get an assortment of meat. Now when I bring it up, I don't necessarily think like, okay, I'm gonna use that ground beef to make meatloaf or I'm gonna use it to make burgers. I just bring it up. And then whenever it's time for mealtime, I know that I have meat defrosted in the refrigerator and I can make something with it. Now we buy all of our meat from my sister. She has a large farm and I usually buy a half of a steer at a time. I get a lot of whole chickens from her, chicken breast, and so I end up getting some different types of cuts of meat that are less desirable than others. Obviously it's easy to go through the ground beef and the steaks, but getting through some of the organ meat like the liver and the oxtail and even the tongue, or round steaks that aren't as tasty as a T-bone steak, all of those types of meats. So I try when I go down there to not just pick the desirable meats, but also some of the ones that are less desirable but are still really good and healthy for our diet. And then it kind of forces me to have to cook those things, because whenever I come to the refrigerator to find out what I'm gonna make for that meal, there might just be round steaks in there, and even though round steaks aren't our favorite cut of steak, it's going to make a meal and I have to get through it because it's in my freezer. All right, so that is the biggest tip. If you have defrosted meat in the refrigerator, it'll be much easier to get a meal on the table. Now, my second tip is to just make sure that you keep your kitchen stocked with the necessities, the staples. So this goes to the pantry and also the refrigerator. If you are someone like me, I like to go to the grocery store once every few weeks and just stock up on things, or maybe you're a person that does Instacart or gets grocery pickup or delivery, but take inventory and check for those staple things. So some of the staple things for me, produce wise, I like to keep a lot of carrots, celery, potatoes, avocados. Those are kind of the main things on hand. With those, I can make soups, I can make stews, I can make casseroles, I can do steamed vegetables. With potatoes, I can pretty much make anything: mashed potatoes, french fries, roasted potatoes, sweet potatoes. It just is a very easy side as long as I have those readily available. So I try to never run out. Oh, and onions, of course. Onions, carrots, celery, those types of staple items. Because if I have those, I know that if I have a meat defrosted and I have those vegetables, I can easily put together a meal to make. Now, avocados, that is something that I like to use just as a side dish on their own. Obviously, avocados are great for if you're having like Mexican and you want to make guacamole, but we like to use those just as an easy side. So having a few ripe avocados ready to just slice open, put a little salt on it. I can serve that with chicken, beef, with eggs, pretty much any meal. That's just an easy side that's ready to go. So my big tip on avocados is around where I live here in the Midwest, they oftentimes go on sale. And when they do, I'll buy 30 to 50 avocados at a time. Now these are not ripe avocados, the ones that are green and really hard. And I will put those all in my refrigerator. And then I'll just set out a couple of them at a time on the counter. For our family, I need like 4 or 5 just because I have a larger family, but you can set out as many as you need for about a meal or two, and they will ripen on the counter. And then I just cut them in half, slice them, and that is a great side to any meal. Now, for the pantry, I like to make sure that I have all of my like baking essentials in there: flour, baking soda, sugar, salt. Those types of things are great whenever you're in a pinch and you're trying to make something. A lot of different recipes call for those ingredients, and if I have them in the pantry, I can easily put together a meal or a side to a meal by making some cornbread or some type of topping or biscuits or bread or something like that. So I try to keep those things in my pantry along with some canned goods. I typically cook fresh, but sometimes having cans make it a lot easier whenever it's dinner time and you don't know what you're going to be making. If I have some canned beans and canned tomatoes in the pantry, I can whip up a chili in like 10 minutes. I can make some type of bean soup. Another canned good that I love to have on hand is canned salmon and canned tuna. If I don't have meat defrosted for some reason, I can make some salmon patties. I can make a tuna salad, or even one thing my family loves is a stir fry with like rice and eggs and veggies, and then putting canned tuna in there. It's a great way to get some more fish and protein into your diet, and it's also very quick to make. So having the pantry and fridge and also the freezer. So for me, in the freezer, having a bunch of meat in there, just an assortment of different types of meat, and then also having frozen fruit and frozen veggies in the freezer is a big staple item for us. So when I go to the grocery store, I like to stock up on frozen veggies and frozen fruit, and then I can quickly put together a smoothie in the morning for breakfast. I can have steamed vegetables for lunch or dinner as a side. It's just something very quick if I have meat defrosted, and I can make whole chicken or some meatloaf or even burgers, just to go to the freezer and pull out a bag of green beans or peas or broccoli and just add a little bit of salt and butter and either roast them in the oven or put a lid on it on a pot and steam it on the stove. We have a really quick side. All right, before giving you guys the rest of my tips, I want to take a quick moment to thank today's video sponsor, Element. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing that you don't. I love that the Element drink mixes do not have any junk in them. They have no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients. They are gluten-free and they have no fillers in them. That is really important for me when I'm picking a drink mix, because I know that a lot of them contain a lot of ingredients that I don't want, and these I feel really good about my family consuming. Element can help prevent and eliminate headaches, muscle cramps, fatigue, sleepiness, and other common symptoms of electrolyte deficiency. It is very important to replenish the electrolytes that you're losing whenever you're living an active lifestyle. Personally been working on magnesium. I know that I have a magnesium deficiency. The biggest reason for this is that whenever I am pregnant, I experience really bad morning sickness. And so I've done lots of research on this, and one of the things that I learned is that a magnesium deficiency can be the cause for that. So every time when I find out that I'm pregnant, I'm like, oh, I need to start taking magnesium, and then I'm too sick and I can't take it. And so I'm like, this is so silly. It shouldn't be something that I do like right when I find out I'm pregnant or right when it starts to be a problem, but it should be something that I'm doing all the time, because it can cause other issues too. But that's just something that I have noticed personally with pregnancies, and having really bad morning sickness is definitely not something that you want to experience. And so I know that I'm low in magnesium, and these Element drink mixes have magnesium in them. So I'm trying to drink one every day just to help replenish and restore magnesium, since that is something that I know that I am low in. Right now, Element is offering my viewers a free sample pack with any order. That's 8 single serving packets free with any Element order. This is a great way to try the 8 different flavors and a way that you can share it with a friend. Personally, my favorite flavor is the grapefruit, but they have several different flavors, so you can pick which one you like best. You can get yours at drinkelement.com/ouroilyhouse. This deal is only available through my link. I'll also have it down in my description box below for you, or you can go to drinkelement.com/ouroilyhouse. All right, so let's get back into my tips for meal prepping. My next tip is that when you have time, you can do some preparing and bulk cooking. This is not something that you have to do every week. For me, it's something that I do maybe once a month or so. One of the big ones for us is sauerkraut. I love to have sauerkraut in the refrigerator, and typically what I'll do is I will get a bunch of cabbages at a time. So this time of year, you can grow those in your garden and have an abundance of them. Sometimes you can find them on sale at the grocery store, get them at the farmer's market, and that would be a great time to do some bulk fermenting. And so I will just bring home a bunch of cabbage and slice it up, make some sauerkraut. I have a tutorial here on YouTube on how to make sauerkraut, and so I will link that for you down below if that's something that you're interested in. But the thing that I love about sauerkraut is once it's made, it's in the refrigerator and it is ready to go for any side. So I can just pull a jar out and scoop some onto a plate and we have a side ready to go. So typically I make 3 or 4 gallons at a time, and that'll last our family for several months. And then it's a side that I don't have to even think about. It's just ready to go. Another thing that I like to do is if I have a big bag of dried beans, I will throw those in my Instapot and get them all cooked up, let them cool, and then divvy them out into different freezer bags and freeze them. And that's basically the same as having canned beans in the pantry. I have beans ready to go in the freezer if I need them for a soup or a stew or chili or something like that. Another good thing that I like to do is if I'm going to be having something in the oven already, like baking a whole chicken, I'll throw a bunch of extra sweet potatoes in there, or either a loaf of bread or something else that has to bake for the same amount of time so that it can bake while the chicken's baking. And then when it's done, I have some other sides done. So a big thing that I like to do, and I used to do this even more, and something that I need to continue to do, is I like to throw in like 20 sweet potatoes at a time in the oven. Obviously, I am feeding a large family, so you might want to do less than this, but if you are a working person and you want to have lunches ready for work, this would be another great thing you can do. So I put all of them in the oven, get them baked. When they're cooled, I will mash them in a big bowl, add in some butter, salt, some honey, and then I have several sides of sweet potatoes ready to go. You could also do this with different vegetables. I've done it with asparagus, where I just put them in the oven with some salt, a little bit of butter, and then I have asparagus, roast it for the week, and just pull out. All I have to do is warm it up, and it's a good side that can go with any of the meat that I decide to cook. I also like to do this with bacon, and just taking like several pounds of bacon, putting it on a bacon sheet and putting it in the oven till it's nice and crispy. And then I can put this, when it's cool, in a storage container. And then in the morning, whenever we make eggs, I already have bacon ready to go that I can pull out and warm up with the eggs. So it's a great way to get some easy sides or dishes ready when you have time. It's not something that you have to do all the time, but if you have extra time, you can get it ready. So then the next time that you go to cook, it is a little bit easier. Another thing that I love to do is doing this with hard-boiled eggs. This is something that I'm doing right now because this time of year our chickens are laying a lot better than they do in the wintertime. So I will hard-boiled eggs, and then they're just always in the refrigerator to make for salad or add into some type of side dish, or even just there for a snack for the kids. If you guys have watched a lot of my cooking videos, you know that I make a lot of things with sourdough. And so that is another staple item that I like to have on hand, and something that I like to do just every evening. I get in the habit of remembering to feed my starter. So then the next day I am ready to make pancakes with it. I can make bread with it. I can make buns with it, bagels, whatever it is that I need to make. My sourdough is already ready to go. So I find that if I have a few sides ready, if I have my sourdough fed and meat defrosted in the refrigerator, I can pretty much always whip up some meal and get it on the table for my family. And I find that if you have these different principles kind of already in place, it makes food very fast and easy. I don't actually spend that much time in my kitchen as some people might think that I do, because I can whip up a meal so quickly. So I find that something like a whole chicken, I call a whole chicken my fast food. And I know most people think that's crazy, because roasting a whole chicken thing seems like something that you would do just like on, Sunday morning or, on the weekend. But it can actually be very quick if you have a defrosted chicken in your refrigerator and you pull it out. Maybe slice up some potatoes or some carrots and just stick it all in the oven, let it bake, and then when it's done, I can serve it with maybe some steamed peas or some sauerkraut, and we can have this big, fancy meal without a lot of time in the kitchen. It really takes me like 10 minutes of prep time. Now, yes, it takes an hour or more to bake, depending on the size of your chicken, but the actual prep time and the amount of time that I'm in the kitchen working is very minimal, and then I have a nice meal on the table for my family. So anyway, those are some of the tips that we do in order to get meals on the table. If you want some like meal inspiration ideas, check out some of my cooking videos, and I show you a lot of these things just in action of me making these different types of meals. So the biggest takeaway is obviously having that meat defrosted and getting those staple items stocked. But the other big thing is to try not to overthink cooking. You don't need this fancy recipe for every single meal. A lot of meals can be made out of the same basic ingredients. If you have your meat, you have your potato, you have your green, you can kind of make a variety of several different meals just with those few different ingredients. So for me, when I have a roast, I don't always make it into a roast with potatoes and carrots, but I'll just stick that roast in the Instapot, take it out and shred it, and now I have shredded beef that I can either add barbecue sauce to make a sandwich. I can make nachos or tacos with it by adding cheese and sour cream and guacamole and salsa. So there's a lot of different directions I can go with even just one cut of meat. So anyway, those are my tips, and I hope that you guys got some good meal inspiration from this video. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button. I get out a new video every single week.